This week of the tip, I thought we'll start with some tool. So the first thing, probably if you haven't painted for a while, is you want to look at your palette, and then most of the paints can be either dirty or dry. So I want to show you how I usually clean up my palette and soften the paints. So if you look, what you really need is, of course, your dirty and hardened palette. And you will need a brush, a spray bottle, and either a palette knife or a utility knife, or if you don't have these two, piece of a cut credit card will do the job too. So what I usually do is when I have the palette like this, it's very dirty. What I would do is use the spray bottle, and also you need a paper towel. Paper towel works best. So you spray at the top of the paints. You see it gets a lot of water there. And once it stays there for a few seconds, and it actually dissolves the surface, dirty paints, then it's the time that you can use the paper towel. Don't go stir it. The paper towel to suck out all these dirty water. And you may need, you see the most of dirty part is gone. So you may need to do a couple of times for each well. That's what I usually do until it's very clean. Well, actually, you only need 80% of a clean. And now you see this is effortless, and you don't need to stir up the bottom paint to get that well cleaned. So you can do this one by one. For instance, like this one, the cadmium yellow, I made some grains. So it's the same thing, you can still use this paper towel probably. Yeah, so now see, portion of this, it's gone. And do one more time, it will be relatively clean. You see the surface grains, the dirty parts get washed off into the paddle of that water, and you just use a paper towel to suck it out. Okay, no need to stir anything. And if the paint is still soft and it's enough to paint, so you may not want to add any paint. But let's say if I wanted to loosen up, it looks like the edges along the well is pretty hardened, and this is probably too. So I would like to loosen this one up and then add a little bit more fresh paints to make the gum bonding a little better. So I normally would use the palette knife like this. Even bigger will do, small will do, or the cut off plastic. I would wet this one a little bit, just by dipping into the water or something. Then do this way. So you see from the edge of the well, and you just loosen up this and use the palette knife to kind of smash the paints a little bit. And because, from the first two rounds of cleaning, you probably already add some paint water in there. Sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes if it's completely dry for, say 6 months, you probably need to really get, fresh paints. But these has been here probably more than 6 months, but I've been painting almost every day. So it's still soft and the gum still works. So that's how I do it. Now, look at this. I'm just smashing this like you're doing with the potato, and scratch a little bit and get this one back. If it's a little too thick, you can add a little bit of water, not too much, because the bonding actually relies on gum, not really that much with the water. So one more time, and just create the texture that's more useful when you paint. And that's how this one gets freshened up. So a few more digging and the pushing and the smashing. So now it's getting pretty good. Okay. Usually, you know, it's very decent. You can paint like this, but most of the time when I do this, I usually do all of these wells at once. And at this point, I would add a little bit of fresh paints into it. And so because of fresh paint also bring the fresh gum into the old paints. And so the old paints will actually get some good bonding with the new ones when you paint in there. Okay, so that's, I usually don't touch it, don't mix them together. They will do their own job, you know, afterwards. So that's pretty much it for this well. And do one more. I have a very old French marine well. This very end. So I would do the same thing. This one probably, it's dirty, but it probably still workable. See, I washed off this palette knife. You don't want to mix that yellow too into your blue. So otherwise you'll be making more mess up in the color wheel. So I wash off this. And keep your brush clean. Sometimes you need clean water to get into here. But right now, what I'm just going to do is the same process. Wash off a little bit. And wait for seconds. And get rid of that. Ultramarine is pretty good. Dirty, but still workable. So that's one more time. Let's do one more time. Still, I can see some dirty thing there. Wait for a second. That will help the water to dissolve the surface dirt. Okay, so now get rid of that, and we repeat this process by using the palette knife. The palette knife is a very good tool. Even we don't use, most of us, we don't use it to paint in watercolor. It's stronger and tougher, but still has those bounce as a tool to do this job. Now you see I'm loosening up this and add a little bit of water and do one more time. Now you see the texture of this paint. Now it's more going back to its original state and a little bit more consistent to work better with your brush later when you paint. Okay, so one more time, little more pushing and smashing. And so here you see it's instantly better. Okay, I'm a frugal. I don't want to lose too much paints when I do this, so most of this will go back there. But sometimes if it gets too dirty, I also do get rid of everything and start over. But that probably happens once a year. Okay, so now do the same thing. We'll put a little bit of fresh paints in there. And let the new and the old paint bond by itself. So this gave us a good way of handling the old paints without throwing everything away. Most of the time I do this kind of thing like maybe 3 months, once a 3 months, when I get most of the paints used up and needs to refresh. So that's pretty much a short tip of the day. And we'll get this started, you know, and then next week I'm going to show you some tip that's related to actual watercolor painting, some painting tips that you can use. Thanks for watching.